I wanted to be an astronaut. You need to be a fighter pilot. Women could not become pilots in the IDF. And I went to the High Court of Israel and I won the case. Suing the Air Force and the Defense Ministry was actually an action of dealing with a basic injustice that I could not contain. Because you're a woman is not a reason. I think if I wouldn't have become an aerospace engineer, I would have become a rabbi.
Not too late, Alice. I know a few programs.
I really started to see people's hearts going through a process which looked like calcification. When you are threatened for your life, you don't really care what's happening on the other side of the fence. I'm not prepared to live in a world where my heart is closed to human beings, whoever they are.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Long Path Podcast, where we explore the past, the present, and future of Jewish life and peoplehood and Zionism. I'm your host, Amitai Freeman. On today's episode, we are joined by Alice Miller. She's an aerospace engineer, a humanitarian, and advocate. Some of you might know her from her landmark Supreme Court case securing gender equality in the IDF. And more recently, Alice has been in the news for her work as the CEO of Natan, Worldwide Disaster Relief, an Israeli humanitarian organization providing medical and psychological aid in crisis zones around the world. Her career spans engineering, activism, and global humanitarian work. And today we're going to talk about Alice and Natan and their incredible work, humanitarian and otherwise. And we're going to see what it takes to move grassroots efforts bottom up and how to affect change in the world. So Alice, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me, Amitai.
I've told you this, I'll say it again on air, on record. I'm really excited for this conversation. Of course, growing up in Israel, many people know you as Bagatz Alice Miller. That becomes your first name, right? Supreme Court case, yes. Alice Miller. But I've had the distinct pleasure and honor to get to know you also over the past several months, and truly an honor to have you here, really. So thank you. So I do want to start with, with that Supreme Court case. I think that it's important for our listeners to hear it from you a little bit, the background. And the reason, or what I want us to focus on, is actually the disposition that led you to even pursuing that path. Okay, because I think that there's the kernel there is what it demonstrates or animates, or it's a foreshadowing really of other choices that you've made, and perhaps what we should be thinking about and learning from you as we think about Israel and the world today and the work that's being done that needs to be done. So, Alice, you made Aliyah. We're skipping through a few chapters here, but you're about to enlist into the army, and what happens?
So, as everything, nothing happens no, let me start this again. Yeah. It happens way before, and now the court case has been, it was 30 years ago, okay? So a lot has happened in the last 30 years. And when I look back and ask myself, what led me on that journey? Usually I tell a story that I've been telling for the last 30 years, which is a true story. I wanted to be an astronaut. I sent a letter to NASA, asked them what I need to do in order to be a space shuttle pilot. They wrote back, they said, you need to be a fighter pilot with 1,000 hours as a test fighter pilot. I said, okay, cool, no problem, I'll be a fighter pilot. And I went to my physics teacher and I asked him, how do you become a fighter pilot? And he said, Alice, you can't, because women could not become pilots in the IDF. And I didn't see any reason why women could not become pilots. So I asked around, I did everything I could do. I studied aerospace engineering. I got myself a private pilot license. I sent letters to anybody I could, members of parliament, to the IDF, etc. And in the end, the president, and the president spoke to me and he said to me, cutie pie, the day boys will knit socks, or the day men will knit socks, is the day there'll be a woman pilot. And I went onto TV, I went onto the radio, I spoke, and I understood that I don't have a choice but to go to the place that can look at it with a little more cleanliness, of bias or other. And I went to the High Court of Israel and I won the case. And this became a phenomenal case in Israel.
Landmark.
It changed. It is a landmark case in Israel. It is one of the, there are not many court cases or high court cases like this one that really changed society, because not only did it open the possibility for women to enroll as fighter pilots, but it enabled women to be on ships in the army. It enabled them to be fighters, infantry fighters, and many, many other roles. I just spoke to one of the commanders of the IDF last week, and he told me that 50% of the force in the anti-missile force in Israel are women today.
Wow.
50%. When I was 30 years ago, there were no women there.
No,
and 20% of the fighting force in the IDF today are women, including my daughter, which is, for me, on one hand, it's fantastic that she tried to become a pilot. She did not pass the exams. And, but I remember taking her there and she just opened the gate, and walked in. And I said to myself, wow, that took me 7 years to open that gate. And she just opened the gate casually and walked in, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And she's a fighter today. And that actually brings endless questions into my heart. So this is a story I always tell, and it's a 100% true story.
Yeah. And before just that, what people the listeners need to understand is that because of the way the army, or the way the role that the military plays in Israeli psyche and society, the change that the drama of the change is that it's huge what happened within the IDF, but the ripple effect on society is unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's not confined to that. It's that's
100% true.
Yeah.
And that's very true. And it's also one of these things, if you say that a woman can't do this, then society assumes that if she can't do this, she can't do this and this and this and this. It's just, it can't be that you can't do this and you can't do that. So, and once that is like,
leaders who emerge from the army as an apparatus, right? Like today, it's like, where did you serve as thing? Then effectively, it's not only that they can't, they shouldn't, the whole thing. But
yeah, very true. But it's like somebody took out a plug. You know what I mean? It was like somebody took out a plug out of the dam and the water just flowed. And that is way bigger than me, myself. You know what I mean? I did sue the Air Force, sued the defense minister, sued the prime minister. I just saw not long ago, Alice Miller against the Minister of Defense. Yeah. That is when you look at the court case, I'm saying, what? I was 19 years old, 19. Yeah. And I went and I sued the Minister of Defense. You know what I mean? It's quite cool.
It is cool.
But I want to say something that I really realize something now, and thanks to my daughter Maya, who's an infantry soldier. I realized that me personally, I could never, ever kill a human being. I couldn't. I'm not built for that. I'm not capable of that. And I don't think I could ever be a pilot. And I realize that the action of suing the Air Force and the Defense Ministry and whoever I needed to sue was actually an action of dealing with a basic injustice that I could not contain. I could not contain the fact that somebody says to me, you can't, and why can't you? Because you're a woman. Because you're a woman is not a reason.
Yeah.
Tell me, I don't know, my left brain doesn't talk to my right brain. My lung is too close to my kidneys. I don't know. Give me something. Tell me why. A woman is not a problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I now know where I got this really kind of itch inside of me to have to do something about it. It started when I was a child in South Africa, when I was 5 years old. And I went into the synagogue. in South Africa. My grandfather was a chazan in the synagogue.
A cantor.
And a cantor. And we went up to the second floor and had a screen in front of us. I don't remember what it was, some kind of a curtain or something. And I was told that if you want to understand life, if you want to understand God, if you want to understand the universe, it's all there in that book down there on the bima. But you cannot touch that book. And you cannot go close to that book. And you cannot touch God as the men can. And I remember as a child, the only thing I wanted to know was God. And later on, the way I looked for God was through the stars. And for years and years, I've been studying astrophysics and astronomy and wanting to understand life, death, and birth through lying under the stars, because I was not allowed to touch the book. And I feel that that thing led me to sue the Air Force, who were between me and God. You know what I mean? If I just go a little bit backwards, this is really where I came from. I never, ever could have sat in an airplane and dropped a bomb on a human being, no matter who's right and who's wrong. You know, I'm not saying somebody's right or wrong here. I'm just saying, me personally, as a human being, it's not something that I could have done. Yeah.
So that's very interesting. I want to introduce a thought. I want to pull on the thread there because and ask when this realization came, because Omri and I, even our producer, we were talking a little about this before, and I'll get there. But I do want to say something that might resonate. There's a Hasidic teaching that the stars that we see are holes that through the fabric of the cosmos, through which God and the divine shines through. So that instinct of looking up at the sky and trying to understand is there, and it's quite powerful and beautiful. I'm very curious to hear when you realized that there was there's the true story that you understood as a 19-year-old that kind of catapulted you into this case, and when did it shift? And the reason I'm asking is because Omri and I, we grew up in Israel. We learned the case, the court case, the landmark case. And my sense was, and also even after watching the article that was done at you in the Israeli TV a couple of weeks ago by Advad Adon, it wasn't like the motivation, was the injustice, right? But it wasn't, the message and what you were carrying forward, as far as I understood, wasn't like, I'm doing this because I want women to be able to do this. I am doing this because I want to be a pilot.
True.
Right? As opposed, right? They go hand in hand, obviously. But I think the resonance of the case would have been different if it would have been, women should be able to do this, as opposed to, I want to be a fighter pilot and I can contribute my role.
No, I want to be a fighter pilot. Life is a very long journey, and we go on all kinds of trajectories trying to find our way to speak to God. I'll go there again. I feel kind of sitting here with you that I can.
I'm a rabbi. This is like
I know
my bread
I
and
can
butter.
say this, I understand, but not everywhere can I say this, what I'm saying to you right now, you know what I mean? But we go on very long journeys in order to find our way on earth. And I think that at certain stages on my journey, I was 100% in conviction that I want to be a fighter pilot. I had no theories in my head about God or trying to explain to myself what and why. I had many friends who went to the pilot's course, and they were writing letters back to me while they were there from school. Alice, we don't understand why you're not here. There's nothing you can't do here. I was smarter than everybody. I was more physically fit than everybody. I came to earth with many blessings, you know what I mean? And I was trying to understand why, where am I, what's wrong here that doesn't allow me to be this, and not talking to God at all at that stage. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. I know now, I remember another thing, that when I went into the officer's course, you go into an officer's course and you go to a shooting range. Everybody in Israel has to know how to shoot a rifle. It's madness, but that is it.
It's madness.
And you go to the shooting range, and there's a silhouette, not a silhouette, a picture of a soldier out of cardboard
Yeah.
that you are supposed to shoot in the shooting range. It's not a circle inside of a circle.
Yeah.
It's a human, it's a
Yeah.
silhouette of a human being with a helmet and with eyes and with a mouth and a nose. And I was standing like this with my rifle in the officer's course. And after I enlisted, I didn't become a pilot, but I went into the Air Force for 10 years.
Right.
And I hear the commanders shouting and everything, shoot. And I'm here and I can't do it. I can't do it. And I've got tears streaming down my face. And the officer comes to me and she says, if you don't shoot, you won't be an officer. And I said, I'm not shooting. I can't. I'm not interested. I prefer to die and not shoot. I don't want to kill a human. I don't want to take a human being's life. Not interested. And in the end, they had a problem because, first of all, I won the court case. So I was Alice Miller and everything. You can't not make me an officer. And I was one of the mitzteinot. How do you say that? Like I was.
Yeah, you excelled. You're one of like the top.
I excelled in the course and everything. So I did everything very well. I just was not prepared to shoot. So they passed me, and I became a major in the Air Force in the end. And I'm telling my secret for the first time. Nobody knows that I didn't shoot, but I really understand that my humanitarian heart, and the reason I'm CEO of a humanitarian organization today, it's not something new. It's a seed that's been in me all my life. And today I feel I am very comfortable sitting in the seat. It takes time, again, to understand this. I'll say just one more thing, that, when you are very talented and smart, and you excel in school, and then you excel in the Technion, and you excel in everything, you become a very excellent aerospace engineer and manager and etc. But it takes time for you to realize where your heart is on life. You know what I mean? On life's path. Because nobody said to me in high school, you can be a humanitarian. That's a career. It doesn't exist. Everybody tells me, you want a James Bond, you want a suit, you want, and it actually, I'm kind of running forward, but it really happened to me in this life. I was a VP space of a company by the name of Helios, a startup company in Israel. I was in charge of constructing a system on the surface of the moon. Together with NASA, I stood on the stage in Azerbaijan in the biggest space conference on Earth, showcasing the system we're going to put on the moon together. And I came back to my hotel and burst out crying and said to myself, what am I doing with my life? What am I doing with my capabilities, with my energy, with my love, with everything I have to give? I have no idea what's going to happen with the system on the moon. Maybe World War IV is going to start, thanks to the system that I'm building on the moon today. I don't know. And I understood at that moment that what I want to do is wake up in the morning and know that what I did today helped somebody somewhere on Earth. Yeah. And that's when I left the space and moved on to become what I am today.
So that's remarkable. And I do want to hear more about that, but I am curious just if you can elaborate, like when was that? What you said, of being put on a path, when we get positive reinforcements about, and it's not, and it doesn't have to do with like how difficult or easy it is, right? It's like, this is the path, I'm getting good feedback, I might as well do it. And you just kind of continue. And if you're good and you excel and are accelerated, you don't have time to stop and think. But so when did you have that moment of realization that it was something else? And I have to admit, as you're thinking about when that happened, when you were telling the story of, reflecting back as a child in the synagogue, there's two pieces there that you said, and I was like waiting to where would you land? And it's very interesting that you landed on like, I wanted the closeness to God, which again goes hand in hand with why can't I be down there, right? Like the technical side of it, of like, why am I up here? But it's actually yearning for the closeness. And I think that is really important. It's the same thing with the, women should be able to do it versus I want to be a pilot. And I think a lot of people in this conversation confuse the two. In other words, they say it's a cause and you're just trying to stick it to the man and you're trying to change, the way the world works. And as a Weizmann said, men don't,
Knit
They don't
socks, yeah.
sew socks, whatever, crochet socks. By the way, he was probably crocheting socks on the phone because you did become a pilot. You know what I mean? Like, that ended up what he was doing. We don't know. But the
Yeah.
point I'm trying to make is that like the way you tell it, the earnestness and the of the story of like the motivation is about the essence and not about the system. I don't know if that makes sense,
100%.
but yeah.
Yes, it
So
does make sense. And
yeah,
also I must say that for, I really cherish human beings as,
yeah,
individual human beings. And I think that, systems in the end are just human beings.
yeah,
Like the chief of staff,
yeah,
he goes to the toilet in the morning, fights with his wife in the morning.
yeah,
He's a human being.
yeah,
And these systems that look so enormous, in the
yeah,
end, are made up of these many, many human beings. So
mm,
I don't feel any intimidation of systems. And
mm,
I really believe in moving with your heart.
yeah,
You move with your heart. If I really didn't want to be a pilot, I wouldn't be able to follow through on this court case.
right,
It was
right.
2 years,
2 years, yeah,
long, long time. I was standing on stages with people mocking me, laughing at me, saying, she loves being in captivity. That's why she
yeah,
wants it.
yeah.
And I'm, what are you saying?
Yeah,
What are you
yeah,
saying?
you're referring to an interview. You were in a TV show, and one of the
Yeah.
guests, because the big question people were challenging is like women can't be or shouldn't be in fighting positions because A, the physical demand, and B, what happens if they fall in captivity, which
If they
is,
fall in
as we know,
captivity, etc.
it's an unfortunate reality that Israel has been dealing with since day one. And the response there was, oh, Alice wants to be in captivity, as if it's some kind of
Yeah,
innuendo, which
yeah.
is totally
Thank you
inappropriate.
for
And
explaining. But
yeah, yeah,
exactly. And it's, I really move with my heart.
yeah.
And when my heart is there, I'm there. And I feel there's nothing that can stop me from anything. You know what I
So
mean?
yeah, so
So, yeah.
when did you realize or notice like the shift in the it's not a change in the story. I just think it's like adding layers or a deepening of the story of the origin. I think that was it that stage in Azerbaijan where you're like, there's something else going on here? Is it was it some other moment? Like when did you realize that the story was a little bit more expansive than you were used to telling?
Mhm. I think it was when I was a guest in Central Synagogue
Mm,
in New York. When I came to visit you, that was November. No,
yeah.
it
Oh,
was December a year earlier when
yeah.
I went to visit Central Synagogue as the CEO of Natan. And I feel a little bit embarrassed now. I don't remember the name of the rabbi that
In
took
Central,
me
yeah. Yeah.
in Central, that took
Yeah.
me to the Aron HaKodesh, opened up Aron HaKodesh, took out the Sefer Torah,
Yeah.
and handed it over to me. And I couldn't touch it.
Mm.
And I said to myself,
Yeah.
what's
It was
wrong with
Rabbi
you?
Angela. It was Angela, Rabbi Angela
I
Buchtal.
think it could be Angela. I'm not 100, no, it wasn't Angela. It wasn't Angela. I know Angela.
Yeah.
It wasn't Angela. It was someone else. And it's quite embarrassing that I don't remember. Anyway, I went to the Aron HaKodesh, she opened it, she handed it to me, and I couldn't touch. And then I said to myself, do it, touch it. Think about like, I'm 50 years old, I'm 54, but of 50 years, I've been told you're not allowed to touch that book. This is how it is in Israel,
Yeah.
You're not allowed
Yeah.
to touch that book. And I want to touch that book. I want to touch that book. I want to know. I think if I wouldn't have become an aerospace engineer, I would have become a rabbi. You
It's
know what
not
I
too
mean?
late.
Like,
It's not
it's
too
not
late.
too late.
It's not too
Yeah,
late,
it's
Alice. I
true.
know a few programs.
I yeah. Yeah. So I really I think that there are a few experiences, but that was a very major one, and suddenly I really got this flashback of understanding like where it all originated from. But I think it's even something more basic. I think inside of me, I have something very I have like a lakmus paper for injustice, which just does not allow me to move
Yeah.
along, say,
Yeah.
okay, so there's some injustice, like
Yeah.
just move along. I can't. I
Yeah.
feel somewhere that I actually have a role here. I have a role to play.
Yeah.
I have the capability, I have the ability, I have the will, I have the heart. I'm here to,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
to
so
do
we
something about it.
so you spent a significant part of your career I mean, first in the Army, in the IDF, and the Air Force, then as an aerospace engineer in the private sector. And we don't spend that much time there. And then there was that moment in Azerbaijan where you were like, this is not for me. This is not who I actually am. This is not what I want or should be doing. And so what was the cascading effect? What followed? What was like?
Well, that was about on the 5th. That was on the 5th of October 23.
Wow.
And then on the 6th of October 23, I came back to Israel on Friday. And then on Saturday, we got the 7th of October. And I knew anyway that I'm on a, I know when my heart moves in a certain way, I'm going. I'm not going to stop. I knew that I'm going to leave space. And what happened that really gave me this understanding that, yes, I need to move along is, after the 7th of October, we were here in Israel, sure that I'm living in the north of Israel in a kibbutz. We were sure that the Arabs are going to come down the hills from around us and slaughter us in bed, like they did on the 7th of October in the south.
Yeah.
And we put up teams of people to fight the Arabs. We all got our knives ready and, to survive, to fight for our lives. And then came the 8th of October, the 9th of October, the 10th of October, and it didn't happen. Nobody came down to slaughter us. And over the weeks that passed after that, I really started to see people's hearts going through a process which looked like calcification. Your heart grows these kind of this calcium layers on it. When you are threatened for your life, when you are scared that somebody is going to come here and slaughter you, you don't really care what's happening on the other side of the fence, or you don't care about anything else but yourself. And I saw this process happening and I said, not me. I'm not prepared to live in a world where my heart is closed to human beings, whoever they are. And I decided to leave the space industry without knowing what I'm going to do. I had no idea. I just knew that I have to find my new way on Earth. And I must say that, my father was a religious Jew. My mother was a Christian who converted to Judaism. And I'm married to a Hindu, to an Indian citizen of the Hindu religion. And I have seen religions, you want to ask anything about Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism, I'm the one, you know what I mean? And I've really always had this in me of the similarity between us as human beings, no matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're a Gazan, if you're a guy from Mozambique, we've just come back from Mozambique, India, whatever it is, I really believe that we're very, very similar as human beings. We have our own stories, we have our own cultures, yes, I'm not denying that, but basically we're all very similar human beings. And I felt that I have, this is the message I would like to bring to life. And I thought that the place to do it is the Israeli parliament. So the first thing I did for the first 3-4 months, I spent studying the Israeli parliament. I spent days and days in the Knesset, just sitting around, listening, seeing how it ticks over there, listening to speeches of people, meeting with members of parliament, meeting with heads of parties. I was sure I'm going to the parliament. I thought, okay, I'm not going to be an aerospace engineer anymore. I am going to become, I don't know, prime minister.
Yeah.
And I spent 3 months or 4 months pursuing this. And slowly but surely, I understood that there are not going to be elections in Israel for a very long time. And I understood that I still have a way to go in, I don't know, defining my understanding of life. I felt a little bit young. I felt that I need to build more of an understanding of history, more of an understanding of the technical realities that I don't know enough about. I've been an aerospace engineer on the
Yeah.
moon for a
Yeah.
very, very long time. I felt like I have to come back to Earth.
Yeah.
And I understood that what I want to do is I want to join the nonprofit world, which I've never touched before. I knew I want to be a CEO because that's who I am.
Yeah.
And then I started looking for an organization where I can bring my gifts to. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So you found Natan. So maybe tell us a little bit about Natan's work. I do want to come back at some point to the political arena and the conversation there. But I think it's important for people to learn about Natan. And it's, Natan is part of a broader industry that I think isn't not I mean the nonprofit industry, of course, but it is one of several organizations. It's unique in its own way. But I think that I think it's important to survey a little bit this idea of humanitarian aid that comes from Israel. Like, what is the driver there? What's the type of work? And then we can talk about Natan specifically. But I think that there are other examples, and the purpose is I think it's like a good antidote to that calcification that you described earlier. Even in our conversation, also for people listening to this, this idea that even in this moment, right, you're describing it. So you didn't join Natan pre-October 7, even though they've been around for a while. You joined after October 7th, and they've been doing very specific work after October 7th. And there's something about the moment which it's in, that we are in, that I think is worthwhile touching upon.
Yeah. Okay, so Natan Worldwide Disaster Relief. It's named after A.B. Natan, who was the first humanitarian in Israel. He went to Africa with humanitarian aid in the 50s when people were saying like, excuse me, we've just put up a state now. Like, what are you doing in Africa? You haven't got enough work to do in Israel. Like, what are you doing over there? And Natan is named after him. It was created by friends of A.B. Natan. A.B. Natan died in 2008. And what Natan does is Natan has hundreds of professional Israeli and some American volunteers, doctors, nurses, psychologists, social workers, dentists. As soon as there's a disaster, man-made or a natural disaster, we go wherever the disaster is within 24 hours and we put up a medical clinic and we support people affected by the disaster. We spend as long as needed over there. And while the doctors are tending to patients, our social workers walk around the community and try to identify needs that are specific to the disaster itself. And we carry on serving the community with psychosocial needs while the disaster relief is happening. We are there usually when local systems are overloaded and cannot take care of the people, and we're there to help, mind that gap that happens during that time. And Natan has been all over the world. For example, after the invasion of Russia to Ukraine, we spent 8 months on the Polish border supporting refugees that were running into to Europe, running away from Ukraine. We had a clinic on the border that supported them for a very long time. In 2019, we put up a clinic in Serbia that supported Syrian refugees that were running out of Syria into Europe with Arabic-speaking volunteers from Israel and Hebrew-speaking volunteers from Israel. And we spent a year in Serbia supporting these people. After the 7th of October, I wasn't in Natan yet, but Natan opened 5 clinics, 3 medical clinics, 2 dental clinics in the Dead Sea and Eilat, supporting thousands of evacuees who just left their houses at a moment's notice until, the HMOs started functioning again and we left. There was, for example, a very big problem of people that had broken teeth. Just because of the tension, they actually broke their teeth from the tension. So we had to make lots of tooth guards and fix people's teeth and stuff like that. And today we're active mainly in Ukraine, Syria, Gaza, and Israel. Those are the places that we're active today. And we've just come back from a tsunami in Mozambique. But those are the places that we're working in today.
And it's
So
all
that's a
volunteer
little bit
based.
about
These are all
Natan.
medical professionals from Israel, from the United States, who mobilize.
This is
and
all
service.
volunteer based, and not only is the workforce volunteers, but I have a staff of 20 volunteers who help me run the organization. My HR lead is a volunteer. My communications lead is a volunteer, medical lead, psychosocial lead, logistics lead, anybody that I have 20 people who support me in managing Natan. It's only myself and an operations officer that get a small salary, and the rest of the people are all volunteer, which is really beautiful. And I just wrote to them not long ago, for a doctor to sit in Mozambique under a tree and treat a patient. There are so many people that have to do something, a lawyer, an accountant, an IT specialist, there's so many things that have to happen for that doctor to be able to sit under the tree. And it's beautiful, and it's really, really, really encouraging to see Israelis doing acts of compassion outside of Israel today, really with all the very harsh publicity that Israel is receiving on earth today. To have people who are just sitting there and serving people because they're in need, not for any other reason, for me is very heartwarming. And I think it's a great service for Israel as well, even though it's a small organization. It's not that we're changing, thousands of people's lives. It's smaller than that, but it's still very meaningful.
I mean, but there's here it's showing up again. Like there's the essence, and then there's like the practical elements. It's like, yes, it's also serving Israel's image in a way, but that's not the purpose, right? The purpose is,
that's not the purpose.
We need to do good. We need to show compassion and donate our contribute our time and our resources and talents to alleviating pain where we see it. And I want to maybe talk a little bit more about that, because as we are in a moment. I mean, Natan's been doing this around the world for some time now.
Over 20 years.
Is this the first time Natan is deployed within Israel since October 7th? Is that like the first time it did?
October 7th was the first time.
Yes. So how does that feel for Natan? I know you joined after, but are you noticing a difference when you're deployed domestically versus deployed elsewhere in this moment?
No, I must say no. It's it was much easier to bring in the volunteers, just because they're here to start off with it, and secondly because after the 7th of October there was such a strong movement of people wanting to help, because this is how it is in Israel, and we saw it very strongly. But no, I must say, that there's no difference between treating a woman in Mozambique and treating a woman in Eilat in Israel. We just had a woman come to one of our clinics in Mozambique 2 weeks ago, fully dilated, and the nurse that we had there happened to be a midwife, and she delivered the baby. It's miraculous. It's amazing that she was there. She was there to help, she was there to do it. And we had very, very touching stories happening in the clinics in Eilat. People are people. People are people.
And so in this moment, are you seeing, what worries me, and I think this is what you alluded to earlier of this, calcification of the heart. Are you seeing a shift in how people are showing up in general in Natan? Are you seeing like a different discourse, or putting Natan aside for a second, in general? Like let's start with that one, then we'll go to the how do we. But are you seeing a difference?
In Natan, the answer is no. I think generally people coming to Natan, their basic heart structure is such that this is who they are, and they believe in helping other people for no reason. So and we have many more volunteers than I can use. You know what I mean? Our problem is not volunteers. Our problem is funding, as always. But we have many volunteers doing this. Even though Israel has gone through a major shift opinions and in somewhat of where your heart is placed after all this madness that we've gone through in the last 2+ years. I was just thinking about it now, just before this interview. I was late for the interview as we spoke because we had a siren going off here. I'm in the north of Israel. And the sound that you get on your phone for the siren is horrific. It feels to me like 1, 2, 3, clear. It's like a shock. You're sitting in life. I have my friends here. We're just sitting around, and suddenly you have this coming from your phone, which is saying there's a missile from Iran on the way here. And then 10 minutes later, there will either be a siren or won't be a siren. You don't know because they don't know where the missile's going to fall at first. Cool, no problem. And then you're sitting here, you kind of relax from that 1, 2, 3 clear, and then the siren goes off. And where's your child? Where's your kid? Where's your dog? Your neighbors, are they coming? Like, what's happening? Okay, we go into the shelter. I put on, I happened to have like 15 people in my shelter today, in my home, just because there were kids around the house. So they all came into my house. I immediately put on ChatGPT trivia, with for the kids, and we were talking about planets and stars and everything. Everybody knows that Alice and astronomy is like unanimous. It's inseparable. So everything is around astronomy, and the kids love it. And then everybody left, and then I came on and I connected what I need to connect, and now I'm supposed to be normal.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to just sit here, drink my water, and talk to Amitai. My heart has just gone through resuscitation. You know what I mean? Our life in Israel over the last 2 years is not normal. It's not normal. You know what I mean? I feel that all of us have this kind of I don't know how to say it. Like our hearts have been fluttered. And then after this fluttering of the heart, many people go in many different directions. Some people leave Israel. They can't take it. Their heart can't hold it. You know what I mean? Many people say, okay, if this is it, this is my narrative. I have to be, you know what I mean? I have to dive into this narrative, believe in it with all my might, and go and become, a miluimnik and do what I can to support Israel because and you get other people that I'm not the age of being a miluimnikit anymore, and I just have to function in this kind of an abnormal world. And the way to do it, by the way, I was just talking to one of my volunteers today, you have to not connect to your feelings. It is very hard to connect to your feelings and function.
Yeah.
Because your feelings are saying to yourself, what is wrong with humanity? Well, this can't be the story. Can't be so much pain. Can't be so much pain around us. Like 2 million people in Gaza living in tents for 2 years. 800,000 people in Lebanon displaced from their homes. 3.2 million people in Iran have fled their homes. People in Israel are being bombed left, right, and center, and Iran and everywhere. What is wrong with us? Well, are we that stupid? Are we that come on, we're smarter than this. We believe that we've had, I don't know, thousands of years of reading the Bible and what is the word? Distilling life, you know what I mean? Distilling, like we've been trying to figure out life for so long. Everybody, all the religions, by the way, Islam as well as Christianity as well as Judaism, we're all looking for the best way to lead life. And look what's happening around us. Look what's happening. Now, I'm not going to politics. This is not, what I'm saying is not a political statement. No. It is a bewilderment of the heart. Like, what is wrong with us? Why can't we find a way to communicate? Find a way to get along? Why are we not putting all of what are those things called when you go gambling, our jetonim,
our
on
chips.
that?
Yeah.
Our chips on that,
Yeah.
Let's put all our chips on that. What do we need to do in order to get along, in order to find a way to live together with our differences? Let's go there
Yeah.
instead of just shooting each other so
Yeah.
much.
So how do we, I mean, what you're describing something very powerful in terms of the ability to stay in that frequency in this moment, right? Of like rising above. On the one hand, you're saying you gotta detach your emotions from your reality, but you're describing an extremely emotionally potent frequency, right? Of like it's not it's not logical, but you're driven from your heart, right?
Yes.
This can't be it. Okay, so how do we, in this moment, we can only affect change to a certain degree, right? We can't change change ourselves first.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that's what we can hope for is the best case scenario. But from a societal perspective, Alice, how do we sustain this force, this life force, we'll call it, in the discourse? How do we push it forward?
Well, one thing that I've understood deeply is that I have to find a way to get along with every single human being around me. I think that I really believe that small actions of a human being are mega important for how we for actually for how the human race moves along.
Hmm.
And I have a few friends in Hokuk, where I live in the kibbutz, who have become so extremely right-wing. They have decided to disconnect from me. And I kind of understood today that I have to find a way to be able to communicate with them, together with them. I want to straighten out all the personal relationships I have in my life. I believe that by doing this, we will have a chance of doing something different.
Yeah. You're,
Especially if you and I do it, you know what I mean?
yeah.
And your child does it, and my child does it, and all this ripple effect. I feel that, you always think about, these smart people in the mega systems, you know what I mean? Like the parliaments of the world and the armies of the world. And we have to find a way to start a change, you and I.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not to be too almost too cheesy, but going back to this idea of like you were,
I'm cheesy. I love
no,
cheesy.
but like exploring the cosmos and the big picture and the universe and the stars and the systems. At the end of the day, coming back down to earth and those interactions and are so remarkably important. I find what I struggle with. I'll admit this is like my internal kind of battle, right?
Yeah.
It's for me, I think there's a struggle or a challenge between sustaining hope and allowing it to overcome fear, right? Because I think that it's there's the tendency of saying, and you didn't say this, but at all, you didn't even hint at it at all, but um, we'll call it the right word, the calcification, the right word shift. The break is a survival, fear-driven instinct, a very protective one, very, very protective one. I have to add layers to my heart so it doesn't get hurt again. I can't be vulnerable so I don't get hurt again. I'm putting on coats of armor physically and metaphorically to protect myself, my family, my nation, right? You brought knives, took out knives in October 8th because you thought your neighbors from the villages next door will come, right? That's fear. That's a lot of fear. What you're describing is hope and kind of and how to overcome fear, not from a naive place of everything is fine and safety wise, right? But how do we emotionally, how do we balance that? I don't know. And I don't know that you like a prescription from Alice Miller, right? But like there's something there, like there is a fearlessness, I would say, it's woven through your story, right? And it could be an innate disposition, it could be a learned habit, it could be a whole set of things. But I just wanted to raise that as a point that I think is worth surfacing?
Well, I think I came to Earth without that feature. I ain't got fear. I don't possess that characteristic. I just don't have it. And I think the reason that I have no fear is that when I look at you, Amitai, I see you suckling from your mother's breast. I see you as an extremely loved human being. And it's not only towards you. That's true to anybody on earth. Anybody on earth, including the person that wants to kill me. The person that wants to kill me, he has a mother. And he was an innocent baby suckling from his mother. Suckling, I don't know if it's the right word. But he was the person, he was extremely loved. He was born in love. Most people on earth are born in love. And I see that in people that I see, in all people. So what is there to fear? What is there to fear? And I'm not naive. Believe me, I'm not naive. Yes, I am. Maybe I speak in a way that sounds so. I've lived in the jungle in India for years. I gave birth on a beach in the Himalayas to my daughters. I've lived with leopards. I've lived with bears. When an animal is running after me, I'll run away. Yeah, 100%. But what we're talking about is, I think 95, 99%, I don't know how much, in our minds. It's in our minds. It's a story that we tell ourselves. I don't have it. I don't have it. I really don't have it. That's all I can say. I see that every single human being on earth and every single animal was born, is godly. Period. Period. And when you live in a world like that, what is there to fear? You know, what is there to fear? That is one thing that I feel that really leads me in life and makes life very, very easy. The second thing is failure. I don't adhere to that either. I say to myself, you know, it's a stupid word. You know, how does a child learn to walk? They fall and fall and fall, you know? If every time the child falls, you say to him, failure, 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 he'll never walk. And we learn by failing. We learn by making mistakes. It's the only way we actually learn anything.
Yeah.
You know, we can sit in the Technion and study aerospace engineering and think that we're learning something. But in the end, when you send your first rocket and it doesn't work, that's when you learn. You know, that's how we learn. So I'm saying, okay, so I'm not going to succeed in everything I wanted to do. Lo noa. Not a big deal.
Yeah.
Get up, move along, do it again. And you know, I think again, that's like a notion we have in our head. It's not an actual thing. And I know many people have lots of things to say about Elon Musk, but he understood that in his engineering, you know, he says, fail lots and fail fast. And he sends up these missiles, these space shuttles every single day, blows them up and learns whatever he can learn from it. And NASA is sitting there with a SLS, a space launch system they've been developing for 20 years, cost them $30 billion, and not really sure it's ever going to fly, you know? So I'm saying that will create fear in a human being.
Yeah.
I'm like, let's move along, you know?
Yeah.
If you want to, let's move along. We just have to move along with the thing. And then fear is, you understand again, it's here. It's the only place it exists, over here.
Yeah. It exists here. We feel it here, which is part of the problem, which is, you know, you have to fight the calcification because I think it's experienced. It's an embodied it can be an embodied experience. But nevertheless,
but
I hear that.
you know that emotion. There are researchers that say that emotion is preceded by thought. So work on your thought. You know what I mean? You can change what you feel by working on what you think.
Yeah.
Because and I've done a lot of work on this, a lot of work. I've spent more than a decade with a spiritual teacher working on this, watching my thoughts, looking at how they dominate my feelings, and actually deciphering between thoughts that I want and thoughts that I don't want or that are not beneficial for me.
Right.
So I look at my thought. I remember I had a job once. I worked in some industry in Jerusalem, and I live 3 hours away from Jerusalem. I had to go through the Bik'ah, through the Jordan Valley to get to Jerusalem, and I loved it. I left at 5 o'clock every morning, and I had 3 hours in the Jordan Valley, nobody around, nothing there. I can just drive on that road, driving, and watching my thoughts, and looking at what comes up and asking myself, do I want this thought? No, I don't. And I take like tweezers, and pick it out, and I put it on the Dead Sea, when I'm going past the Dead Sea. I'm saying, okay, thank you very much. I don't need you anymore. You stay there. And I carry on going, you know what I mean? So it's like, we clean our bodies. We take so much care of ourselves. But this thing, that rules us so much, we don't need to do anything. But I believe that if we look into what's going on here, we can release a lot of the fear that we feel that envelopes us, which is self-made.
Yeah. Yeah. So Alice, look, this has been incredibly illuminating and inspiring. And part of what we're trying to do with this podcast and these conversations is, of course, first of all, learn from our guests and their experience and kind of through their eyes and see the world. And part of it's about, the Jewish people and when we're going. And, the name of this podcast, The Long Path, has its own kind of weight that carries it. But I try to end with these questions of like, we are on a trajectory, right, in Israel and the world. And maybe help us see like what happens if we continue this trajectory, and what's an alternative path that we can take, and what needs to happen so we are on that alternative path.
Wow, that's an enormous question. But first of all, I can't tell you what will happen if we carry on this trajectory. You can just read the Bible and you'll see. It's like it's been there before. We've done it before a few times. You know what I mean? It's written there black on white. What happens if we carry on this trajectory? And I feel it's high time we take the risk of going on a different trajectory. It's high time. The trajectory that we're going on creates a lot of suffering for us and for other people on earth. And I believe we can do it otherwise. And I believe that we need highly spiritual people to lead the way. It's a time for that. And another thing I really believe truly is that we need to see 50% women in the parliaments of the world. I think that women have a different outlook to life than men do. It's a very general statement what I'm saying, but I believe it's true by the sheer fact that we have a womb and we give birth. And I feel that when parliaments will have 50% women in them, not 1 woman, 2 women, 3 women, because then you get women who, use their claws and elbows in order to be able to get there. And it's not exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, having 50% women in parliaments of the world to be able to have a more holistic kind of outlook on life. I think things will change in a big way. Yeah. But I really, right now, I'm at loss of words, you know. I really am with this extreme pain that is going on around us, and so much blood that is being poured into the ground. You know what I mean? It's a very, very tough time to live on Earth. It's not easy. Yeah.
No.
And I'm sorry, I don't have enough wisdom to give advice on how we should move differently today. I don't.
Sometimes wisdom comes in words and sometimes it comes in frequency and in capacity. And I think that, you know, in our conversation, I'm so grateful that you joined and you gave us a insight into, you know, how you experience the world and the motivations and working and leading with the heart as a key component, even when it's difficult. So, Alice, thank you so much for joining the Long Path podcast. I'm always inspired and moved and grateful for the time that we could spend together. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Humanitarian. Thank you for this opportunity. You know, there are things that I can't say everywhere. I feel like, you know, it's just you and I sitting here, so I can say it.
And I hope people will tune in and hear this. So toda. All right, Omri.
Yeah.
I can't forget that Omri's there the whole time eating popcorn. You know,
I also didn't think about it. I didn't think about it for a second. I was totally engulfed in you. Amitai, I love you. But Matt, you have such beautiful questions. Such beautiful, beautiful questions. And I'm grateful for somebody asking me them, you know, because it doesn't happen every day that people ask you these kind of questions. It's beautiful.
Thank you. It's a zchut. And yeah, I'm a big fan. So whatever we can do to help support from afar. Fantastic. It's not easy to do what you're doing in general and in particular these days. So
yeah. And I really just we can just have a prayer, you know, you know, I had a conversation. I have a beautiful communications manager. His name is Yoav, a volunteer. And he said to me, Alice, you have two choices. He says, you either go and live in the Himalayas with your husband. You know, we have a resort in the Himalayas that we booked there. Or you go to the parliament.
Yeah.
He says you have to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I really, it is the place where things can change. You know, I really, it is the place that changes things. But right now, when you look at the parliament and look at the way things are done, you know,
I may have mentioned this to you. My vision is creating a party of, and this is like, you'll get this immediately because it's the essence and not the system, right? A party led by women, right? Not to make the point of women, like not a, you know, lo mifleget nashim. Do you know what I mean? You know, and I have like a list of my mind of like the, you know, the nifcheret that I'd put in that thing. And you know, I've tried to play a very small role in connecting people that I know. This is not gonna, we're not gonna air this, and this is, I mean, it's recorded because it's technically recorded, but like I've connected, you know, Rachel Azai as a dear friend, and Nat Wilf, we know her because she's a fellow at Z3 and try to, you know, help people, like, you know, and people have different expertise, and it's not about, you know, it's about building a robust team that people's like, they're not here because it's some kind of quota system. Thank you for joining us in this episode of the Long Path podcast with Alice Miller. I found it to be, you know, inspiring, not like in the superficial way, but being able to tap into this frequency, to lead with the heart and try to fight against the calcification of our hearts in this moment. It's not easy. It's very difficult. It's easy to become a cynic. It's easy to look at the world through realpolitik and cost and benefits and war. But it's also important to stay in tune with humanity so that everything that we're fighting for is justified at the end of the day. And so this conversation with Alice really gave me some hope on a deeper frequency than just kind of like, it will be better. So thank you for joining us for this episode. My question for you today is, with everything going on and the world and the news cycle and, you know, the tsunami in Mozambique to the war in the Ukraine to Iran, Lebanon, Gaza, you name it, you can pick your source of darkness. how do you keep a sense of hope? How do you fight against the urge to calcify or fortify your heart? That's all for today's episode of the Long Path Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to follow and subscribe and share it with someone who you think would also enjoy the content in these conversations. You can find our full episodes on YouTube and on Spotify. We're also going to post clips on our social media. Please join our email list to stay up to speed with what we're up to. And, I just want to thank again the team behind the scenes who make this happen and possible. I want to thank our guest, Alice Miller, for joining us today. And of course, thank you for tuning in and listening to another episode of the Long Path Podcast. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.